Hello there, Killian111. I find the 500 character limit in the YouTube comments box is somewhat constricting, so I thought I'd respond with another video to some of the questions that you'd asked. Now, in the first comment that you made about my original video, you said that I hadn't addressed the main point. So I watched that video again, and I can honestly say that I can't see where I failed to provide an answer to the question that had been asked. The question from Big Jerry was for the top 2 reasons why I'm an atheist, and I feel that I gave 2 reasons. In the comments section for that video, you went on to ask a further 3 questions, and at the risk of repeating myself, which is probably all that I'm going to do here, I'm going to have another crack at answering those questions. So here we go. Question 1 is, why do I not belong to a religion? Well, all of the religions that come readily to my mind require faith in the existence of a deity or deities or souls or some other kind of supernatural occurrence or being or structure or phenomena. And I don't believe in the supernatural. I believe that there are rational, scientific explanations for everything that we experience. And so, for me to belong to a religion when I don't believe in its underpinning principles is going to be pointless from a spiritual point of view, and hypocritical if I'm just doing it for somebody else or for appearances, which is exactly what I would have to be doing because, as I've said, I don't believe in it. So I'm hoping that that now answers that particular question. Now, question 2 is, why am I an atheist? And the answer to this one is really straightforward. Everybody is born an atheist, and I have never had anything happen in my life, no experience, no lesson, no evidence has presented itself that has required me to change that point of view. And I know that there are a lot of people here on YouTube who are atheists who actually come from a religious background. They've actually deconverted, but I'm not one of those people. Religion never really featured much around our house when I was growing up. My mother, I think, is somewhat religious in the sense that she believes in God and the supernatural and life after death. But I know that my father definitely is not. I think he got married in church and allowed my brother and me to be christened simply because it was what my mother wanted, and because in the 1960s and 1970s Britain there was a stigma associated with getting married in a registry office or not having your children christened. So as a child I was never really indoctrinated with religion. I was never taught to pray or anything like that. I went to Sunday school a few times, but it never really took, and it wasn't something that I enjoyed or looked forward to, and I wasn't forced to do it for very long. So my answer is that the reason I'm an atheist is because I've always been an atheist, and I've had absolutely no reason to change that point of view. And that's in spite of the numerous people I've encountered in my life who have been deeply religious and have tried to convince me of the error of my ways. So question 3. Why do I believe that God does not exist? Well, I believe that God does not exist because I've seen no evidence to suggest that it does. And I really can't think of a clearer or more succinct way of explaining it than that. Now, you're quite right when you say that there's no proof that God does not exist. But I think you're quite wrong when you say that my argument is circular. Disproving the existence of something is going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible. But from a rational perspective, the burden of proof lies with not disproving that something exists, but with proving its existence. It lies with proving the claims are being made have some kind of substance. Now, the flying spaghetti monster, the invisible pink unicorn, Russell's teapot, these are all really well-known examples of why the argument that failing to disprove the non-existence of something doesn't mean that it logically follows that that something must exist. So, lack of evidence doesn't disprove God, I'll grant you, but it does call into question the validity of claims made for God's existence. Now, I've tried to think of another example that I could use that isn't too kind of like, thought experimental or philosophical. And I didn't really want to have to use a scientific method again as an example, and I thought about the legal system. So, somebody can commit a crime, and lack of evidence for that crime doesn't mean that they didn't commit it. So the parallel that we have here is that lack of evidence for the existence of God doesn't mean that God does not exist. But the same lack of evidence for the crime doesn't mean that the accused did commit the crime either. And that's actually the argument that's put forward for the existence of God in spite of a lack of evidence. Now, the rational approach, the one that's central to our justice system, is presumption of innocence until proven guilty. So the default position is that the accusation of guilt, the claim of guilt, the existence of this crime and that the crime was committed by the accused, that is false. And what kind of proof is needed to disprove that, that initial assumption? Well, evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And that kind of evidence really shouldn't be too difficult to provide, given the magnitude of the claims that are being made for the existence of God. So the idea that God's existence should be the default argument is really the equivalent of taking somebody into court and saying that because there isn't any proof that they didn't commit the crime for which they're being accused, they're guilty. Now, I don't believe that that approach makes any sense at all. And that's why I will continue to disbelieve in God. I will take the default position that God does not exist until I get any kind of evidence to the contrary.